Your role has been cut due to company restructuring. My name is Reed Callahan at 56. I had dedicated 18 years as a senior captain at Altus Air, headquartered in Salt Lake City. For nearly 2 decades, I maintained a flawless safety record. I ensured every flight departed on time. I mentored countless new pilots who would lead our airline forward. Lyle Pearson, the newly appointed operations manager, delivered the news while fixated on his computer screen, avoiding any eye contact. His hands rested folded on the shiny desk, his fingers tapping rhythmically on a spreadsheet that apparently measured my value to the company. "Your compensation no longer fits within our growth strategy," he said, finally looking up. "The severance details are in this envelope." I accepted the manila folder without glancing inside. Outside the window behind him, I saw a Boeing 737 taxi toward the runway, the morning sun sparkling on its wings. Flight 2243 to Denver. Jacob Peters was the captain today, someone whose captain certification I had signed off on just 3 years earlier. "Is there anything else?" I asked, calmly. Lyle shook his head and returned to his screen. "Human resources will take care of your exit. They're expecting you downstairs." I stood, adjusted my uniform jacket out of habit, and headed to the door. 18 years of service evaporated in a 3-minute meeting. No mention of who would take over my training responsibilities. No concern for the 6 flight instructors I managed. No recognition of the loyalty I'd earned from the crew. "Captain Callahan," Lyle called as I reached the door handle. "We'll need your uniform back before you leave." I nodded without looking back and stepped into the hallway where Ellen from HR was already waiting with a clipboard, her expression perfectly neutral. As we walked to the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Thomas Wright, one of my first officers. "Is it true?" News spread quickly in an airline. I put my phone away without replying and followed Ellen to the processing room, where I handed over my badge, keys, and the uniform I'd proudly worn for nearly 20 years. In the locker room, I changed into civilian clothes and folded my uniform with military precision, a habit from my Air Force days that never left me. When I placed my captain's hat on the stack, I spotted a small photo taped inside the locker, my original Altus crew standing proudly next to our plane. Most of them were captains now, commanding their own flights. They had no idea their instructor had just been grounded. I began flying at 19, scraping together money for lessons by working nights at an airport refueling station. By 25, I had my commercial license and was flying cargo routes across the Midwest. Then came 11 years in the Air Force, from training flights to combat missions. When I joined Altus Air at 38, I brought that discipline and exactness with me. In those early years, Altus was expanding and eager for experienced pilots to build the company's foundation. Harold Winters, the founder, personally recruited me, valuing my military background. "Build me the best damn flight crew in the industry," he said. For 18 years, that's exactly what I did. I trained every pilot, fresh graduates from flight school, military transfers adjusting to commercial flights. Every captain who earned their 4th stripe over the past decade had sweated through emergency drills and tough landing simulations with me in the simulator. We built a reputation for excellence and safety that made Altus the airline of choice for business travelers and families alike. Then Harold retired 3 years ago. His son Jeffrey stepped in as CEO, bringing in consultants and efficiency experts more comfortable with spreadsheets than flying. The changes started subtly: reduced training hours, faster turnaround times, fewer backup crews, small cuts that improved numbers but strained operations. 6 months ago, Lyle Pearson arrived to streamline flight operations. He'd never piloted anything more complex than a rental car, but held an MBA and a mandate to cut costs. The warning signs were there. Senior staff vanished, replaced by contract pilots at lower pay. Training budgets were slashed. When I voiced safety concerns at a management meeting last month, Lyle smiled thinly and said, "We're aligning resources with industry standards." My phone buzzed again as I left HR a message from Catherine Reynolds, our chief flight instructor, inviting me to the pilot's lounge. I should have gone straight home, accepted the severance, and moved on. Instead, I found myself riding the elevator back to the third floor. 8 pilots were gathered in the lounge when I arrived: Thomas Wright, Catherine Reynolds, and 6 others, all captains I had trained, all wearing the same barely concealed anger. "Is it true?" Thomas asked again. I nodded, effective immediately. The room fell silent. "They said it's a restructuring," I explained evenly. "Nothing personal, just business." Catherine scoffed. "Nothing personal? You've been here longer than half the management team has been alive." "What will you do now?" asked Daniel Cooper, a senior captain who was my first officer for 5 years before his promotion. I shrugged. "Take some time off, figure out my next move." The words felt hollow, even to me. "This isn't right," Thomas said, pacing near the windows overlooking the tarmac. "You're the backbone of the training program. Half the pilots here wouldn't have their wings without you." "The decision's been made," I replied. "No use fighting it. I appreciate your support, but you all have flights to catch." Catherine folded her arms. "My next flight's tomorrow, but I'm thinking of calling in sick." Others murmured agreement, but I shook my head. "Don't risk your careers. That's not what I want." As I turned to leave, my phone rang. Harold Winters' name flashed on the screen. I stepped into the hallway to answer. "Reed, I just heard," his voice tight with anger. "Jeffrey told me it was a mutual decision. You were ready to retire." "Not exactly," I said, watching the pilots continue their heated discussion through the glass. "This isn't how I built this airline," Harold said. "It's not how we treat our people, especially not someone who's given everything to Altus." "It's not your company anymore, Harold." There was a long pause. "No, it's not. But I still have connections in this industry." Victor Chen from Skyward Global had been searching for someone to completely revamp their pilot training program. Was I interested? Skyward Global was a rapidly growing charter airline specializing in corporate and luxury travel, boasting a solid reputation and considerable financial resources. I admitted I might be interested, but having just been dismissed, I needed some time to gather my thoughts. "Take the weekend," Harold advised. "I'll arrange a meeting for Monday morning." As I ended the call, I noticed Lyle Pearson hurrying toward the pilot's lounge, his face flushed with frustration. Peering through the glass, I saw the initial group of pilots had swollen to at least 15, all in uniform and wearing grim expressions. A feeling stirred within me. For 18 years I had given my all to Altus Air. Perfect attendance, flying holiday shifts, covering last-minute emergencies when others called out sick. I had built the airline's entire training program from scratch, devised safety protocols that became benchmarks for the industry, and personally coached dozens of pilots. Yet they discarded me in a mere 3-minute meeting, handing me a manila envelope. Returning to the lounge, just as Lyle barged in from the opposite side, he snapped, "Don't you all have flights to prepare for?" Not a single person moved. All 20 pairs of eyes turned expectantly to me. I made up my mind. "Actually," I spoke softly, "I think we need to address some crew safety concerns." Lyle's expression grew stern. "Captain Callahan is no longer part of Altus Air. Any safety issues should be raised through the proper channels." "You mean through you?" Catherine replied with that icy calmness I'd recognized on difficult flights before. "The same person who slashed our simulator training hours by 30% just last month." Lyle adjusted his tie. "Those changes were driven by efficiency data and industry standards." "Those changes are putting planes at risk," Daniel interjected. And now you're firing the one person who's been working extra hours with junior pilots to make up for those cuts. I raised my hand to prevent things from escalating further. This isn't about me. It's about adherence to protocol and ensuring pilots receive proper training. The concerns are legitimate and can be filed through official channels. Lyle glanced at his watch. Right now, the pilots have schedules to uphold Flight 3176 to Chicago boards in 40 minutes. Flight 2240 to Phoenix departs in an hour. Still, nobody budged. "That's my flight to Chicago," Thomas announced, "and I'm not comfortable taking off without these safety issues being addressed first." A twitch appeared in Lyle's jaw. "You're contractually obligated to fly your assigned routes." "Unless a genuine safety concern exists," I countered. "Federal aviation regulations are clear on that point." Lyle's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Is this your final act, Callahan? Trying to disrupt operations on your way out?" "I'm merely supporting valid concerns raised by your pilots," I said evenly. "As a certified flight instructor, I'm professionally obligated to do so regardless of my employment status." The tense silence stretched on until Lyle pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Jeffrey now." While he stepped aside to make the call, the pilots drew closer to me. "So, what's the plan, Reed?" Catherine asked quietly. "No plan," I answered honestly. "Just making sure your voices get heard." But something was growing in the room, a shared resistance I hadn't anticipated. More pilots arrived. Alerted by texts circulating through the crew, the lounge was becoming packed. Lyle returned, wearing a self-satisfied smile. "Jeffrey's on his way." Meanwhile, all pilots must immediately prepare for their scheduled departures. "Or else?" asked James Bennett, a veteran captain who had moved from United around the same time I joined Altus. "Or you'll face disciplinary measures," Lyle snapped. "Potentially termination." James laughed sharply, the sound slicing through the tension. "I've logged 27 years of spotless flight records and 14 years at this airline care to justify firing senior captains during the busiest travel season." The elevator doors slid open and Jeffrey Winters entered, his tailored suit starkly contrasting with the pilots' uniforms. At 35, he resembled a younger, less weathered version of his father but lacked Harold's warmth and aviation expertise. "What's happening here?" he demanded, scanning the room. "Your pilots have serious safety concerns," I stated before Lyle could speak. "Concerns ignored for months." Jeffrey's face tightened. "Reed, you no longer work here. This isn't your problem." "It's the concern of anyone who cares about flight safety," I replied. "And anyone who might fly your planes." Turning to the pilots, he said, "I know there's attachment to Captain Callahan, but this is strictly a business decision." His gaze swept the room. "I expect everyone back to their duties immediately." Still, the pilots didn't move. "This is insubordination," Jeffrey warned. Catherine stepped forward. "No, sir. This is a formal safety stand-down initiated by concerned crew members under federal regulations and our union contract." Jeffrey flushed with anger. "Fine. You have 1 hour to submit your concerns in writing to Lyle. After that, everyone returns to their scheduled flights." As he left, he stopped beside me. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "I could have eased this transition for you." "This isn't about me," I repeated, but we both knew the truth wasn't so simple. The pilots gathered in the briefing room, quickly compiling a thorough list of safety problems. It wasn't difficult. They'd been piling up for months: curtailed training hours, rushed turnaround times leaving inadequate windows for pre-flight inspections, deferred maintenance issues, pressure to cut fuel loads to save costs. I stayed back quietly, offering input now and then but mostly observing the crew I had trained organizing themselves naturally. They were professional, methodical, and meticulous, exactly what I had taught them. While they worked, I stepped out to make a phone call. "Victor Chen," the voice was crisp and authoritative. "Mr. Chen, This is Reed Callahan. Harold Winters recommended I get in touch." "Captain Callahan," Victor replied, his tone warming. "Harold had great respect for you. I understand Altus has made a grave error. That's one way to describe it." "I have a proposition," Victor said. "But first, what's the situation there now? Harold mentioned some unrest among the pilots." I briefly explained. "Fascinating," Victor said after I finished, "and unfortunately predictable. Listen, I need to make some calls. Can you meet tomorrow instead of Monday?" "I'm available whenever you want." "Good. Meanwhile, do not sign anything from Altus. No severance, no non-compete agreements, nothing." "I can do that." "Excellent. I'll follow up with details." When I walked back into the briefing room, the mood had shifted noticeably. The pilots clustered around Catherine's laptop wore serious, concerned expressions. "What's going on?" I asked. Daniel motioned me over. "We're gathering documentation to back up our safety complaints." Catherine then found something in the system and turned the screen so I could see it. A series of maintenance reports for aircraft in Altus's fleet. There were discrepancies between the initial submissions and the final versions. These were altered, she explained. Maintenance issues that were originally flagged as critical had been downgraded to advisory status. Service intervals required by manufacturers had been extended beyond recommended limits. As I scrolled through the files, my unease deepened with every page. "How long has this been happening?" I asked. "From what I can access, around 4 months, Catherine replied, "right after the new maintenance management software was put in place." "The software Lyle insisted would make operations more efficient," Thomas added. "This goes beyond mere cost-cutting. It's dangerous, potentially criminal." "We need to include this in our report," I said. Catherine nodded. "Already done. But Reed, this isn't just a safety issue anymore. This is outright fraud. These records get submitted to the FAA." Just then the door swung open, and Jeffrey entered with Lyle and 2 men I didn't recognize. "Your hour is up," Jeffrey announced. "Lyle will review your concerns and respond accordingly. Meanwhile, these gentlemen from company security will escort Captain Callahan off the premises." Catherine shut her laptop and rose. "We're not finished." "Yes, you are," Jeffrey said sharply. "All pilots must report to their scheduled flights immediately or face termination for job abandonment." "Did you know about the falsified maintenance reports?" I asked him directly. Jeffrey's face remained impassive, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The doctored maintenance records submitted to the FAA, where critical issues were downgraded?" Lyle stepped forward quickly. "That's a serious accusation without evidence and completely unrelated to the agreed discussion." "We have the proof," Catherine said firmly. Holding up both versions of the reports, Jeffrey and Lyle exchanged a glance that said, "It all." "This meeting is over," Jeffrey declared. "Security will remain until all pilots have left for their duties." As the guards approached me, I saw Thomas quietly slip Catherine's laptop into his flight bag. Whatever happened next, the evidence was safe. Suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about firing me. It was about silencing anyone who might expose their wrongdoing. The security team escorted me to my car in the employee lot. As we walked, my phone buzzed with a text from Victor Chen. "Meeting confirmed 9 a.m. tomorrow, Skyward Global HQ." Alone in my car, I called Harold Winters. "It's worse than we thought," I told him. "They've been falsifying maintenance records." Harold's sharp intake of breath spoke volumes. That explains the sudden profit margins Jeffrey's been bragging about, cutting corners on maintenance. The pilots have proof, but Jeffrey's threatening termination if they refuse to fly. "Where are you now?" "In the parking lot. They just escorted me out." "Good. Stay clear of the terminal. I'll make some calls." I drove home to my empty house, divorced 3 years ago, daughter away at college on the East Coast, and waited. Within an hour, my phone lit up with messages. Thomas reporting Flight 3176 to Chicago canceled due to mechanical issues. Catherine's 2240 to Phoenix grounded because crew was unavailable. James's Denver route canceled across the board. Altus pilots were finding reasons not to fly. It wasn't an organized strike, which would be illegal without union procedures, but individual decisions grounded in professional judgment and safety concerns. By evening, the Altus website showed dozens of canceled flights. Then I received a call from an unknown number. Captain Callahan, this is Lisa Brennan, FAA Safety Inspector. I understand you may have information about falsified maintenance records at Altus Air. I do, but I'm not the primary source. You should talk to Catherine Reynolds, their chief flight instructor. We're working on that, Inspector Brennan replied. In the meantime, would you be willing to provide a statement? Absolutely. The next morning, I arrived 15 minutes early at Skyward Global's headquarters. The modern building gleamed in the sunlight. Its blue and silver logo prominently displayed. Victor Chen himself met me in the lobby, which was unusual for the CEO of a growing airline. He was about my age, with a firm handshake and direct gaze. "Thank you for coming, Captain," he said, as he led me to the elevator. "We have much to discuss." Upstairs in the conference room, Victor got right to the point. "Altus Air is in serious trouble," he began. "The FAA launched an investigation last night, and their stock has already fallen on the news. I'm not surprised. What might surprise you is that we've been monitoring Altus for some time. Their cost-cutting created an opportunity for us. We've been planning to expand our pilot roster to compete more aggressively on premium routes." He slid a folder across the table containing an employment contract with a compensation package far better than what I had at Altus. "We want you to lead our flight operations and training program," Victor said. "Complete autonomy. Build it your way, with safety as the priority." I scanned the contract, noting the title, Director of Flight Operations. "There's more," Victor added. "We're ready to offer positions immediately to any qualified Altus pilots who want to switch." "How many positions?" I asked. "How many pilots do you trust?" I thought of the faces I'd seen yesterday, the professionals I'd trained and mentored over the years. "At least 30, I answered, "experienced, safety-conscious captains and first officers." Victor smiled. "Perfect. That's exactly who we need to grow." My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "FAA investigators at HQ, all flights grounded pending inspection." I showed Victor the message. "Timing is everything in business," he said. "Sometimes you wait for the right moment to act, like when your competitor fires their most connected pilot and alienates their entire flight crew in one disastrous day of mismanagement." "I accept," I said, extending my hand. The plan was coming together, not revenge, but rebuilding something better. 3 weeks after my termination, I stood in Skyward Global's expanded training center. The state-of-the-art facility featured 6 flight simulators, cutting-edge emergency training equipment, and classrooms outfitted with the latest aviation technology. Victor delivered on his promise of full autonomy, approving my design plans without hesitation. "What do you think?" he asked as he surveyed the space. "It's exactly what I pictured," I replied. Checking his watch, he said, "They should be arriving any minute now." Right on cue, the main doors swung open. Catherine Reynolds stepped in first, followed by Thomas Daniel and 27 other former Altus pilots, all dressed in civilian clothes and carrying their personal flight bags. "Welcome to Skyward," I said simply. Catherine smiled. "Nice setup you've got here, Captain." As the pilots began exploring the facility, Victor pulled me aside. 30 pilots in one day. That's quite a statement." "They're the best in the business," I told him. Suddenly, my phone rang. Harold Winters calling. "You watching the news?" he asked without preamble. "No, why?" I replied, "Turn it on any business channel." I nodded at Victor, who activated the large screen in the briefing room. The business news displayed Altus Air's stock plummeting, down 46% since the FAA investigation started. The ticker at the bottom showed trading had been temporarily halted. "Jeffrey just resigned," Harold whispered in my ear. "The board forced him out after the preliminary FAA findings. Lyle's gone too, effective immediately." The news anchor reported, "Industry sources confirm Altus Air has canceled over 340 flights in the last 3 weeks due to pilot shortages and grounded aircraft. The company is leasing planes and crews from competitors at premium rates to maintain core routes." Victor faced the gathered pilots. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of premium aviation." I thought back to Lyle Pearson's dismissive line, "Your compensation is no longer aligned with our growth model." He had been right in a way. I was worth far more than Altus had paid me, a fact now precisely reflected by the market value of 30 skilled pilots and 340 canceled flights. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't what you say, but what you build after you leave. 6 months later, I stood on the tarmac watching Skyward's newest pride, a sleek Boeing 787 Dreamliner, make its final approach. The plane touched down flawlessly, reverse thrusters engaging perfectly. A textbook landing, as expected from Catherine Reynolds. Skyward Global had rapidly expanded, adding 16 new routes and capturing a significant share of the premium market that Altus once dominated. Our training program was already being hailed as the industry gold standard for safety and excellence. Harold Winters joined me on the observation deck, watching the aircraft taxi toward the terminal. "Altus's board offered me the CEO role yesterday," he said casually. "Asked me to come back and clean up the mess." "Are you taking it?" I asked. He shook his head. "That chapter's closed. Besides, I'm enjoying retirement." The Dreamliner came to a stop at the gate. In moments, Catherine and her crew would disembark, having completed another successful international flight. "They're sending an envoy to talk to you," Harold continued. "New board chairman. They want you back. Read desperately." I wasn't surprised Altus had managed to stay afloat, but its reputation was damaged. Rebuilding would need experienced leadership they no longer possessed. "What will you tell them?" Harold asked. Below, Catherine appeared from the terminal, spotted me on the deck, and waved. "I'll tell them I'm exactly where I belong." We watched as the ground crew prepared the Dreamliner for its next flight tomorrow. I would be back in the captain's seat, piloting a charter to Tokyo, not because Skyward required me in the cockpit, but because I negotiated flying rights as part of my executive role. Some things you don't surrender, no matter the title. "You built something remarkable here," Harold said. "We built it," I corrected, thinking of all the pilots who had trusted me and taken that chance. The afternoon sun glinted off the plane's wings, just like that morning when I had watched Flight 2243 taxi from Lyle Pearson's office window. The difference now, I was exactly where I was meant to be, not grounded but flying a better path.